Hi everyone, and welcome to another video with me, Jensa. I'm playing Lineage 2 again, and today I wanted to get into a little bit about battling and hopefully give you some ideas of what you can do in the game, some things to look at beyond simply auto battling. I know a lot of people, especially when they first join the game, feel like battling is a little bit boring, is a little bit thoughtless. All you're doing is turning on auto battle or clicking your quest screens and letting the computer kind of run you around and fighting. But as you progress a little bit more in the game, there's definitely other things that you're going to want to think about when you're battling. There's actually a lot of nuance and a lot of customization you can do with battling. So I thought while we let my player actually run around a little bit here, we could talk about some of that and give you sort of maybe a little bit beyond the basics of battling. I am not a battling expert, definitely not a PvP expert, but I have learned quite a bit and thought I would share some of that. So where I'm going to go ahead and start is on the character screen. And obviously, first thing we're going to talk about is combat power. Your combat power is the most general and quickest gauge of where you stand when you're battling. If you come into your character screen here, your combat power will show here and compare it to the standard combat power for somebody at sort of your level with your skill set, your um, type of character, that sort of thing. So you can see I'm slightly outstrapping the standard for combat power, and we'll talk about some reasons for that in just a little bit. But if you haven't looked at this yet, this will give you sort of a general guide as to sort of where your combat power stands on your server. Um, Combat power, I mean, basically anything you do in the game almost is lending itself toward increasing this combat power. So that's kind of why I call it the most basic or quickest measure, because if you do nothing else, continuing to increase that combat power will make you better at battling, whether that's against the environment or against other players. Um, One of the main things you want to look at in addition to your combat power that will lend you some combat power is your equipment. You can see my equipment here, but I'm going to go ahead and go into the inventory screen and talk about that excuse me, talk about that in a little more detail because that is one of the beginning areas where you can see a little bit beyond the simple auto battling. So let's go look at my inventory. And you can see that I am currently working on finishing up my rare equipment. I do have all of the pieces here. My chest and my boots are here, just working on getting some upgrade stones so I can finish leveling both of those up and then I'll use them. You can see if I put this on right now, my combat power would drop by almost 2400 for the chest piece and almost 7,000 for the boots, so I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to wait till I can level them up a little bit more. I have plenty of varnish and stuff like that. Just need those upgrade stones, like I said, so hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. But again, on a sort of basic level, the higher grade your equipment, the more it's enhanced, and the higher you level it up is going to give you combat power for each of those items. So I talked a little bit about those and about the forge in the couple of other videos I did, the beginning videos, but leveling up, upgrading, and enhancing are going to give you those kind of quick boosts to combat power. There's a lot of other stuff to think about with your equipment though. So for instance, if I click on an armor piece here, and bring up the info for it, you can see there's a lot more information here than simple combat power. So if I take a look here, this particular piece of equipment gives me minus 5% damage from bosses. So this particular set that this piece belongs to, the Majestic armor, is sort of a PvE armor and gives you bonuses or buffs for that. Another thing to look at down here is the set bonuses. If you get a matching set of armor, when you have 2, 3, or 4 pieces, you get additional buffs to various attributes based on having those additional pieces having a full matching set. So if we look again at the rare armor, which is the set I'm going to hopefully finish soon, and look, once I have all 4 pieces of this, I will get all of these buffs. I'll get the max HP increase, the critical resistance increase, and the final damage decrease. Um, this set, your rare armor generally is for PvP, so it's generally these buffs. It also gives you a buff against other players. So again, that's something to think about. If you're not a person that's going to be doing a lot of PvP, maybe you want to level up one of your other sets of armor and have those set up. Another thing that you can think about when you're in here, before I get into that, let me say accessories have the same thing. You get sets. If you have matching sets, you can get bonuses for all of that. So I believe the sets do have to be the same grade, which is why you see only 3 here. Because I only have 3 R pieces. Again, once I get some upgrade stones, I'll upgrade these other 2 and get those set bonuses again. So it's also something to think about when you're in the process of building your armor set. Do you want to upgrade individual items or wait till you have enough to upgrade multiple ones at once so you do gain those set bonuses? Another thing that you see on this screen, if you click the lightning bolt up here, you will see that you get enhanced set effects. This is based on the enhancements, obviously. The small plus numbers that you see here, 13, 11, 10, etc. If you have 7 or more equipment pieces, that includes weapons, armor, and accessories. If you have 7 or more that are all at a certain enhancement level starting at 8, you get bonuses for that as well. So as you can see, I currently have the 9 bonus. If I get a couple of more pieces above 10, I will get these additional buffs. So they're not straight combat power buffs, they're buffs that are applied to your various other attributes here. So again, as you're starting to see, there's a lot of different ways to build your character to have different effects or different strengths rather than straight up combat power. Um, the next thing I want to talk about are skills, because those have a very large effect as well, rather than, again, just looking at the simple straight up combat power. So let's go take a look at the skill screen. And after you do your level 30 or 31 quests um, to specialize, you're going to have a lot more skill options here, both in active and passive skills. So one thing I really suggest that you do is get to know your skills very well for whatever class, whatever specialization you picked. Get to know your skills. Each race and each character type within that race is going to have different strengths and weaknesses. So read through these, really get to know what they are. If you have to do a little research on them, and really learn what you have. So for instance, I am a sorcerer, and my passive skills have to do with weapon and armor mastery. I also have Death Whisper and Blaze, both of which give bonuses to my group. So if I'm in a party, these will give attack, critical attack bonuses to my group. So that's another thing to think of, especially if you're doing specialized tasks or something like that. Being in a party with certain character types will give you different special effects, different increases in combat power, and different increases to other elements of your character. In your active skills, things to keep in mind are what exactly the skill does. So for instance, my Molten Bowl skill will launch basically a ball of fire. It goes through the first couple of levels of enemies and explodes at the end of its trajectory. This also has a knockdown effect on the characters that it hits. Flame Strike is the same sort of thing. It only hits one time, doesn't go through any characters or anything, but has a knockdown effect. If you have skills with knockdown and stun effects, and you can chain two or three of those together while then hitting it with your high damage skills, that will be a very big benefit for you, a very give you an upper hand over the person or mob that you're fighting, is what I'm trying to say there. So skills are always something to keep in mind. Also, one thing to think about a lot as you're battling, you see these blue dots over each skill. That means right now I have those skills set to autocast. That means if I'm just not controlling anything myself or just letting my character run around, when those skills become available a second or so later, the computer will autocast them if it feels that the situation is right. By unclicking those dots, you can choose not to autocast those skills. That can come in handy a lot of different times, again, both in PvP or PvE. If you're doing certain types of battles, or again, you want to chain your skills together in a certain order rather than um, rather than let the computer cast them sort of at will. So, for instance, you may want to do your skill that knocks the character down, then hit them with a high damage skill, and then go ahead and hit them with another knockdown or stun or something like that, and keep maybe going back and forth like that. Um, there are certain situations where you may want to do something a little bit different, depending on exactly the characteristics of what or who you're fighting. So again, get to know your skills really well, decide which ones you want to use at which times, and sort of how they affect the world around you. One other example I'll give you is this Molten Bowl skill. Like I said, it has a little bit longer trajectory. It hits things a little bit further away. So especially maybe if I'm hitting a dungeon that's a little bit new for me or a little bit higher level for me, I may not use that Molten Bowl skill at all. The reason being is it'll go beyond what I'm fighting at close range and may hit and attract enemies from further away. So that's a good one that I usually turn off if I'm fighting higher level mobs that, maybe I can only take on one or two at a time and don't want to accidentally draw down three or four on me at once. So again, get to know your skills, get to know how they work, and you can get a lot of benefit from adjusting them just right. Um, the next thing I want to look at is actually under settings. If you go to settings, you have several tabs here. A lot of it has to deal with how your phone, deals with the game, shows the game, how you receive notices, things like that. But there is a battle tab here, and there's a lot of useful settings in this battle tab. The first three have to deal with, well, the first two rather have to deal with your potion, and the third is if your character has any healing skills. Um, so these will activate at certain levels. You can set at what percentage they will activate. I usually like to keep my healing somewhere between 30 and 50. That way I'm not wasting a bunch of pots, but it's enough to keep me alive. Notice I have my mana potion to 0 right now. That's because sort of when you're auto battling, I don't want to waste a whole bunch of those. If it goes completely out, then yeah, I probably need a little boost. But generally, if I'm auto battling mobs, I don't need that to be coming in, at 50% or anything like that and just wasting a bunch of it. Sometimes I don't even need all my special skills to be firing that rapidly. I don't play a healer class, so this is kind of just a random setting. The other things as we scroll further down are your potion usage. When you start getting different grades of potions, you can set these to determine whether it'll use the higher or lower grade of potion first. Normal attack range is something definitely to think about, especially if you're a newer player. I like to keep that turned on. It's just sort of a personal preference for me. That will show blue areas around you that will show you where your attacks are going to land. So by having that turned on, you can get a good feel for what mobs each attack is hitting, and you can adjust your positioning or adjust your casting based on that. And especially if you're new, it'll help you really learn how your skills work so that you can see where your attacks are falling, and again, how you might want to adjust your own behavior for that. Auto battle radius is one you'll probably be using and changing a lot. Um, it pretty much is what it says. When you're on auto battle, what mobs will you attack? Melee means you'll only attack the ones that are very close to you, sort of the hand-to-hand combat range. Close goes out a few more meters. Distant goes out pretty far. Distant will run you all the way around the room, or it can even run you from area to area in the world map if it hits just right, because you will run pretty far looking for mobs. You won't run almost to maybe half the limit of the mini map or something like that. I haven't calculated it exactly, um, but it will really run you around a lot. So you don't want to use that one unless you know you're in an area where you don't mind just sort of attacking anything around you, any number of enemies back to back to back, and that won't necessarily kill you. Um, you can see here you can also avoid battles against elite or stronger monsters. Maybe you want to farm cores in an area where you know you can take out the mobs, but if the boss spawns, uh, the rare monster spawns, you may not be able to necessarily take that one out. So you could run around all night taking out his minions and sort of leave him alone. Um, Automatically counterattack when attacked is a good one to keep on, because if either you're not watching or maybe you're doing some other task and something runs up to attack you, your character will automatically respond. Um, so a lot of different settings here again to adjust depending on your situation and what exactly you want to do with the character while you're fighting, or depending on, are you in a dungeon? Are you out in the world? Are you battling things that are much lower level than you, or a little bit higher level than you, and you need to sort of reel your character in rather than just let him auto battle. Um, the next thing, probably one of the last things I'll talk about in this particular video, is I really want to talk about battle decks. Battle decks are a really neat feature in the game. I'm sorry, I'm going to the wrong screen here. It's a really neat feature into the game that I think is probably somewhat underused by a lot of people. So I want to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to access it from the inventory menu. I think you can get to it from a couple of other places. I kind of prefer this one, just personal preference for being where I need to be and seeing what I need to see. These are your battle decks, the little blue shining numbered dots. You can see them right here. When you're in the world, they're also down at the bottom corner over here. I can show you that in just a moment if you didn't see it a while ago. But if you click these, you'll notice you have up to 5 battle decks. And when you're in each battle deck, you can change almost everything that has to do with battling for your character. So you can change what equipment he's wearing in each deck. Right now I'm using 3 battle decks and I have the same equipment in each one. But once you build up multiple sets of equipment, you may not want to do that. So for example, you may have one battle deck with your rare PvP armor on. You may have another battle deck with your PvE armor. You may even have a third where one is your PvE armor against sort of regular monsters and has the strength bonuses against regular mobs, and the other one has your strength bonuses against bosses and elite mobs. So you can really, change your character and customize it for each type of situation that you might be in, and able to switch through them really quickly, depending on, again, what situation you find yourself in. If you notice, you also have all the stuff we just talked about can be changed in these battle decks. Your skills, including whether or not a particular skill autocasts, can be set in the battle deck. Your potion usage can be set. Your all of the things that were on the settings tab can be set. You can change, again, all the skills. You don't have to have the same set of skills. You could change which skills show up in each deck. So for instance, you might have a deck for when you're in a party or versus when you're alone. One of my skills here, this mana boost, is only really useful when I'm in a party because it boosts the attack for special skills, and I believe decreases the mana usage for special skills for my party members. So again, really, you can really get into customizing and getting down to the nitty gritty of different situations you're in. I have my battle decks I have three that I use right now, and really I have them pretty simple. I've been meaning to go in and kind of maybe tweak them a little bit, add a couple of more for different situations, but just to kind of discuss what I have right now. So, my first battle deck, as you'll see here, the main differences are that I have my Molten Bowl set to not autocast, and I have it at melee range. So again, this is my battle deck for when I'm in those maybe elite dungeons with higher level mobs that I can only take on one or two at a time. I can position myself in just the right place and set this to this one battle deck, number one battle deck, and I don't have to worry about running around all over the world and you know, again, attracting or getting caught in a large group of mobs that I can't handle. Two is notice all the skills are on autocast, but the range is set to close. And three is all the skills set to autocast and the range is different. It's set to distant. So this is kind of when I'm doing maybe weaker mobs, forming cores that I need to complete in my codex that I've kind of fell behind on. I use three and just run all over the place, killing as many things as quickly as possible. Um, what I'd like to do and what I've been considering doing is setting four and five again with some different equipment, especially when I get that rare equipment those pieces completed. Um, I may set a little bit different equipment, different weapon maybe for when, maybe when I'm teleporting around doing the world bosses, not the world bosses, the area bosses that spawn every 4 hours. I may use a different weapon or a different set of equipment for that rather than just leaving my PvP armor on all the time. Um, but it really, it really does. If you get these set up for your personal play style in different situations, it really makes a big difference. Rather than having to go in and spend the time getting to the skill screen and turning that on and off constantly, you can just click the button right here, click the other setting, and boom, you've got all of those settings changed all at once for you, depending on exactly how you set it up. Um, so that is it for now, I think. Like I said, combat power is really your most important and your uh, easiest and most basic gauge of how powerful you are compared to the mobs and the um, other players in the game. But there is a lot of nuance into it depending on how you exactly set up your gear, whether you have complete sets, whether you are upgrading or enhancing things evenly, um, and how you set your skills and your battle settings and your battle deck. So hopefully this has shown you a few things maybe you haven't thought about, and we'll get into some more details, especially on maybe how to build that combat power, and what specific situations, different settings might help you out in future videos. Again, I hope you enjoyed it and learned a little something, and we will see you later.